We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from right now? Let us know in the comments. Now, let's dive into today's story. The rain poured down in the small town of Portland as Ethan Carter's electric car pulled into the driveway of his modern hilltop home at 2 p.m. His environmental conference in New York wasn't supposed to end until the next day, but something inside him told him to come back early. The house's security panel flickered with an unusual sequence of entries. His cousin Lucas's access code had been used several times in the past week. Ethan's grip tightened on his briefcase as he entered through the garage. The security cameras silently followed his movements, their red lights blinking as they captured what was unfolding. The sound of luggage wheels rolling across the hardwood floor drew him toward the master bedroom. His wife of 8 years, Claire Martin, was in the middle of packing 3 large suitcases surrounded by piles of high-end clothing. A new diamond bracelet sparkled on her wrist, one that he hadn't bought for her. She didn't flinch when she saw him in the doorway. "What's going on, Claire?" Ethan asked, his voice even, though his mind was already piecing together the reality he hadn't wanted to see. Claire's well-manicured face twisted into an expression that mixed relief with bitterness. "Oh, good. You're home early. Saves me from leaving a note." She continued, folding a silk blouse with meticulous care. "Time you learned the truth, darling." "And what truth would that be?" Ethan remained in the doorway, his presence filling the frame. She laughed, a harsh sound that was nothing like the warm chuckle he had once loved. "Those business trips you've been taking with Lucas? They weren't for work. They were our romantic getaways. 8 months of them, to be exact." Her hand casually rested on her stomach. "And now we're moving to Paris. I'm pregnant with his child." The words hit Ethan like a punch, but his face remained impassive. Years of business negotiations had taught him how to hide his emotions. "I see. And I suppose Lucas arranged all this?" "Oh no, darling. Your parents did," Claire said with a cruel smile, reaching in her purse to pull out 2 first-class tickets to Paris. She tossed them onto their bed. "They've always preferred Lucas over you, you know? Who do you think funded our little trips? That precious family inheritance you're so proud of?" Ethan's phone buzzed with a message from his assistant, Kayla. "Sir, you need to see this. Urgent issues with the company accounts." "Nothing to say?" Claire taunted, sliding another designer dress into one of the suitcases. The great Ethan Carter, finally speechless? "Lucas said you just stand there, trying to look strong. He knows you well." "Better than you might think," Ethan replied coldly, noticing how she flinched at his tone. His eyes caught movement on one of the security feeds displayed on his phone. Claire was texting frantically, likely to Lucas. As she zipped up the final suitcase, something fluttered to the floor, an ultrasound image. At that moment, Ethan's banking app lit up with notifications. Large transfers from family accounts. Money movements he hadn't authorized. "Did my parents help you pack too?" Ethan asked, his voice icy. "Or was that all Lucas's doing?" Claire's composure cracked slightly. "Your mother helped me choose the apartment in Paris. Said it was the least she could do for the woman carrying her real favorite son's child." She lifted her chin defiantly. "Lucas is everything you're not. Passionate, spontaneous, alive. He doesn't hide behind spreadsheets and corporate regulations." "No," Ethan said flatly, his eyes never leaving her. "He just hides behind my name while he's with my wife." "Tell me, does his wife, Olivia, know about your little Parisian plans? Or is she too busy with her board duties at my company to notice?" The color drained from Claire's face. "How did you know about Olivia?" "I know everything about my company, Claire. Everything." Ethan stepped aside from the doorway. "You should hurry. I'm sure Lucas is waiting nearby, probably practicing his concerned cousin routine." "You can't stop us," Claire snapped, attempting to wheel a suitcase past him. "Your parents have arranged everything. By this time tomorrow, we'll be starting our new life, and you'll be alone with your precious company and your environmental work." Ethan smiled coldly, causing her to step back involuntarily. "We'll see about that. Give my regards to Lucas." He caught her arm as she tried to brush past him, his grip firm but not rough. "That bracelet he gave you? It was bought with stolen money. I'd hold on to it. You might need to sell it sooner than you think." He released her, watching as she hurried down the hallway, her confident stride now a retreat. The security cameras recorded every movement, just as they had captured everything else. His phone buzzed again. Another message from Kayla, this one with attached financial documents. Ethan waited until he heard the front door close before pulling out his phone. Kayla, book me a suite at the Four Seasons. And get me everything you can find on Lucas's travel expenses for the past year. Everything. The rain continued to drum against the windows as he surveyed the bedroom, his mind already forming plans. They thought they knew him, his wife, his cousin, even his parents. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The Four Seasons presidential suite transformed into a war room within hours. Dual monitors displayed financial records while stacks of documents covered the mahogany desk. Ethan's jacket hung forgotten on a chair as he sorted through years of carefully orchestrated deception. Mr. Carter? Violet Dawson, the company's senior accountant, closed the suite's door behind her. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched a thick manila envelope. What I'm about to show you, it could cost me my position. Your loyalty won't be forgotten, Violet. Ethan gestured to the chair across from him. Tell me everything. She spread documents across the desk, pointing to highlighted sections. Lucas has been clever, but he got sloppy recently. These travel expenses? He claimed $2.3 million over 18 months. The documentation looks perfect. She pulled out a series of receipts. The timestamps. He supposedly attended an environmental conference in Vancouver while simultaneously dining at a Michelin-starred restaurant in Paris. Ethan's eyes narrowed as he examined the forged signatures. My own name. He's getting better at copying it. There's more. Violet's voice dropped. The Paris apartment? He used company resources, setting up shell corporations to hide the purchase. And these environmental compliance reports? She tapped another folder. Complete fabrications. If the EPA discovers this. A knock interrupted them. Lawrence Hart, the private investigator Ethan had hired, entered with a USB drive. You'll want to see this, Mr. Carter. Your cousin's been busy. The surveillance photos appeared on screen. Lucas entering high-end hotels with various women. Claire visiting a fertility clinic months ago. And most damning of all, Richard and Marina Carter, Ethan's parents, transferring artwork to a private storage facility. Ethan's phone lit up with a text from Marla Petty, Claire's sister. We need to talk. Not over the phone. Continue, Ethan instructed Violet, while messaging Marla to meet him. The accountant pulled up offshore account records. The Cayman Islands transfers are sophisticated. Someone with legal expertise helped set these up. Troy Poole. Ethan muttered. My parents' lawyer. Keep going. Lawrence clicked through more photos. Your cousin's got quite the hidden life. Wife and 2 kids in Vancouver. Pregnant girlfriend in Los Angeles. Ex-wife and child in Chicago. He's been playing quite the field. Sir? Kayla, Ethan's assistant, entered with a tablet. Marla Petty is downstairs. And there's something else you need to see. Before she could continue, Violet gasped at her screen. Mr. Carter, these patent applications? Lucas is trying to steal your environmental cleanup technology. He's filed paperwork in France under one of his shell companies. The suite's phone rang, the lobby announcing Marla's arrival. Ethan straightened his tie. Kayla, escort Miss Petty up. Violet, compile everything on those patents. Lawrence, I want detailed files on each of Lucas's families. It's time we heard what Claire's sister has to say. Marla Petty entered, looking nothing like her usual polished self. Her designer outfit was wrinkled, her makeup smeared. Ethan, I can't keep quiet anymore. Sit, he commanded softly. Start from the beginning. Your parents' anniversary party, she stammered. That's when it started. I saw them. Lucas and Claire. In the garden. He was telling her how your parents always wished he was their son instead of you. Her hands twisted in her lap. They used my beach house for their meetings. I tried to talk her out of it, but They kept arranging these private dinners for them. Troy Poole's involvement? Ethan prompted. He helped hide the money transfers. Said it was all legal. Just family estate planning. But last, she pulled out her phone, showing texts. Claire told me she's not even sure the baby is Lucas's. She was seeing her personal trainer too. Kayla interrupted gently. Sir, the board is calling an emergency meeting. Michelle Wilson, Lucas's wife. She's starting to ask questions about the European contracts. Ethan stood, his expression hardening. Marla, you'll sign a formal statement. Everything you've told me. It wasn't a question. Violet, prepare those financial records for the board. Lawrence, give me everything you can on that personal trainer. What are you going to do? Marla asked, her voice small. Your sister and my cousin thought they were writing a love story. Ethan's smile was sharp as broken glass. They're about to discover it's a tragedy. He turned to Kayla. Get me Francis Valenzuela on the phone. It's time we brought in our lawyers. The pieces were falling into place, each revelation fitting into a larger pattern of betrayal. Outside the suite's windows, the Seattle skyline glittered in the rain, unaware that one of its most prominent families was about to implode. One more thing, Lawrence added, pulling up a final photo. Your parents were seen at their bank this morning. They're trying to liquidate the family estate. Perfect. Ethan studied the image of his parents hurrying from the bank's private entrance. They've always underestimated me. Time to show them exactly who they've betrayed. The emergency board meeting at Carter Environmental Solutions buzzed with tension. Executives shifted uneasily in their leather chairs as Michelle Wilson, Lucas's unsuspecting wife, studied the quarterly reports with growing concern. These European contracts, Michelle tapped the document. The cleanup protocols don't match our standard procedures. And the testing data? She glanced at Ethan. None of this has gone through proper EPA validation. Before Ethan could respond, his phone silently displayed a message from Francis Valenzuela. EPA auditors are on their way. Anonymous tip about fraudulent environmental reports. Should reach the office in 20 minutes. Mrs. Wilson. Ethan addressed Michelle formally, noting how her professional demeanor contrasted sharply with the surveillance photos Lawrence had shown him. Perhaps we should discuss the Paris operations in detail. Specifically, the technology patents recently filed there. Michelle frowned. Paris operations? We don't have any. Her voice trailed off as Ethan's assistant Kayla distributed new folders to each board member. These documents outline systematic fraud, patent theft, and environmental violations, Ethan announced, standing at the head of the table. All traced back to our European operations director. But that's Lucas's position. Michelle's face paled as she opened her folder. This must be a mistake. The boardroom doors burst open as EPA officials strode in, led by Chief Investigator Sarah Chun. Mr. Carter, we have a warrant to examine all environmental compliance records. Of course. Ethan gestured to Violet, who wheeled in a cart loaded with files. We've been conducting our own internal investigation. You'll find everything organized chronologically. Michelle stood abruptly, documents scattered across the table. I don't understand. These bank statements, these properties in Paris. Her hands trembled as she read further. A fertility clinic? Mrs. Wilson. Ethan's voice carried genuine sympathy. There's more you need to know. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. A commotion outside drew their attention. Through the glass walls, they watched Lucas stride through the office, his usual confident smile faltering as he spotted the EPA agents. Perfect timing, Ethan muttered. Then louder. Chief Chun, you'll find the falsified reports in Lucas Carter's office, along with evidence of how environmental cleanup funds were diverted to personal accounts. Lucas froze in the doorway, his face draining of color as he saw Michelle holding the incriminating documents. Michelle, darling, I can explain. Explain what? Michelle's voice turned arctic. The stolen patents? The missing millions? Or perhaps your pregnant mistress moving to Paris? The elevator dinged, revealing Ethan's parents, Richard and Marina Carter. Their expressions shifted from determination to shock as they took in the scene. Mom! Dad! Ethan greeted them coldly. Here to transfer more assets to Lucas's Paris love nest? You don't understand. Marina stepped forward, her socially perfect mask cracking. Lucas has vision for the company's future. He'd take us international, while you waste time with local cleanup projects. Richard placed a restraining hand on his wife's arm. Son, we can explain everything. The money transfers were just temporary. Save it for the federal investigators. Ethan cut him off. They're particularly interested in how company funds ended up in personal Cayman accounts. You can't prove anything, Lucas snarled, his charming facade evaporating. Those patents are mine. I did all the work while you played environmentalist hero. Actually, Violet spoke up, her earlier nervousness replaced by cold precision. I have documentation proving Mr. Ethan Carter developed those cleanup protocols, including dated research notes and prototype testing data. Michelle slapped Lucas hard across the face, her wedding ring leaving a mark. You bastard. All those business trips, while I sat on this board, helping you steal from your own family. Mrs. Wilson, Frances Valenzuela, entered smoothly, elegant in her tailored suit. As the company's legal counsel, I must inform you that, as an uninformed board member, you are protected from personal liability. However, she turned to David and the elder Aguirres. Others aren't so fortunate. The EPA agents emerged from David's office, carrying boxes of evidence. Sarah, Chin approached with handcuffs. David Aguirre, you are under arrest for environmental violations and fraud. You can't do this, Marina protested. Richard, do something. But Richard Aguirre stood frozen, watching his empire crumble. Years of favoring his nephew over his son had finally backfired. Zach's phone buzzed with a text from Lawrence. Gabriella spotted leaving the fertility clinic. DNA test results confirm. The baby isn't David's. One more thing. Zach addressed the stunned boardroom. Effective immediately, I am freezing all executive accounts pending investigation. This includes family assets potentially tied to these crimes. David struggled as the agents cuffed him. You've ruined everything. Gabriella and I had plans. Yes, Zach smiled coldly. You did. Send my wife a message. Would you? Tell her Paris is lovely this time of year. From inside a prison cell, the board members sat in shocked silence as David was led away. Michelle's quiet sobs were the only sound. Marina clutched Richard's arm, their social standing evaporating with each passing second. Kayla, Zach turned to his assistant. Contact our major clients. They'll want reassurance about their contracts. Violet, work with the EPA on those compliance records. He gathered his papers, adding quietly, and someone get Mrs. Wilson a car home. The sun set over the Seattle skyline, casting long shadows through the boardroom windows. In a single afternoon, generations of family loyalty had shattered, leaving only the cold truth of betrayal in its wake. Frances Valenzuela's corner office, overlooking the stormy Puget Sound, was where the senior partner of Seattle's top law firm worked. She arranged documents across her desk as Zach reviewed the preliminary legal strategy. Our forensic accountants found something interesting in the prenup, Frances pointed to a section. Gabriella modified critical pages after signing. The document filed with the court doesn't match your original copy. Troy Poole's handiwork. Definitely. He didn't expect you to keep the original in your private vault. Frances pulled up offshore banking records. The tax evasion angle is even better. David and your parents created a complex network of shell companies. Each transfer to these Cayman accounts violated federal law. Kayla entered with a stack of sealed envelopes. The loyalty agreements are ready for key employees to sign. IT has implemented the new recording protocols in all offices and conference rooms. Excellent. Zach reviewed the employee list. What's the status on the board members? Janet Chun and Marcus Rodriguez have confirmed their support. They're furious about the patent theft. Kayla handed him another document. The media strategy is ready too. We've lined up exclusive interviews with selected reporters. They'll run the story our way when the time comes. Francis's phone buzzed. The environmental violations report just came in. David falsified data on 12 major cleanup sites. We can file lawsuits in multiple jurisdictions. Sir? Violet Dawson appeared at the door. You need to see this. She placed a laptop before them. David's applying for an expedited French business visa. He's claiming to represent our company's European division. Zach smiled coldly. Perfect. Francis, contact our lawyers in Paris. Time to shut down his escape route. There's more. Violet hesitated. The stock is starting to drop. Rumors about EPA investigations are leaking. Let it fall. Zach studied the trading data. We'll buy back shares at a discount once this is over. He turned to Kayla. How's our disinformation campaign? Working perfectly. David believes we're focusing solely on the patent theft. He has no idea about the tax evasion evidence. Francis organized the documents into separate files. I prepared lawsuits for each jurisdiction. The moment we strike, he'll be fighting legal battles on multiple fronts. What about his other families? Zach asked. The Vancouver wife hired a divorce attorney this morning, Kayla reported. The Los Angeles girlfriend is demanding a paternity test. His Chicago ex-wife is reopening their custody agreement. The intercom buzzed. Mr. Aguirre? Michelle Wilson is here. Show her in. Zach straightened his tie. Francis, stay. Everyone else, give us the room. Michelle entered, her usual board member confidence replaced by controlled fury. I've been reviewing the company records. The scope of David's fraud. How much did you know? I discovered it the same day you did. Zach gestured to a chair. Michelle, what I'm about to show you goes beyond corporate theft. He nodded to Francis, who slid photos of David with various women across the table. Michelle's hands trembled as she studied the images. All this time while I defended him to the board. We need your support. Zach leaned forward. The company is facing multiple environmental violations. David's actions put every contract at risk. What do you need? Vote with me to remove him as European Operations Director. Support the emergency board measures we'll implement. Michelle's expression hardened. Do better than that. Make him pay for every lie. That's the plan. Zach shared a look with Francis. But first, we need to secure the company's future. Your public support sends a message to other board members. Done. Michelle stood, smoothing her skirt. And Zach, when you take him down, I want a front row seat. After she left, Francis updated their timeline. EPA notifications are ready. Once we file these reports. No, Zach interrupted. Let David proceed with his visa application. Let him think he's winning. He pulled up surveillance photos of his parents shredding documents. When we strike, we take them all down at once. Kayla returned with urgent news. Sir, Gabriella's fertility clinic records arrived. The timeline? It's not what she claimed. Save it. Zach waved her off. That's ammunition for later. Right now, focus on the corporate angle. Let's see how many wrongs my dear cousin has committed while thinking he's invincible. The afternoon sun broke through the clouds over Sapporo, casting long shadows across the sleek office of Francis Valenzuela. In the distance, the towering structure of Aguirre Environmental Solutions stood as a testament to decades of family legacy, a legacy that Masadica would now reclaim, one strategic step at a time. One last thing, Francis added. Your parents' attempt to liquidate the estate? I've filed injunctions in 3 prefectures. They won't move a single yen without court approval. Masadica nodded, satisfaction clear in his eyes. They always told me that family was everything. Time to show them the cost of that lesson. The EPA raid began precisely at 9 a.m. Sarah Chun, leading a team of investigators, made her way through the European division of Aguirre Environmental Solutions, their badges gleaming under the fluorescent lights. David's secretary watched in stunned silence as they seized his computers and files. Mr. Aguirre, Agent Chun said, holding up a stack of falsified reports. Care to explain these contamination readings? David maintained his usual charm, adjusting his silk tie. Surely, there's been some mistake. These reports were all properly verified. By whom? Sarah cut him off, sliding a document across the desk. Because Dr. Jensen, whose signature is here, passed away 3 months before this certification date. Meanwhile, on the executive floor, the emergency board meeting was in full swing. Masadica sat quietly as Emiko Wilson, one of the board members, presented their findings. The purchase of the Paris apartment, Emiko's voice rang out, was funded with embezzled cleanup grants, money that should have been used for toxic waste removal in 3 communities. Board member Kaido Suzuki slammed his hand on the table. Our stock has dropped 30% this morning. Clients are demanding criminal investigations. Emiko's face darkened. It gets worse. I have financial records showing that David diverted environmental testing funds into personal accounts. Every major contract from the past year is now in question. The boardroom doors swung open as EPA agents led David into the room. His smug expression faltered at the sight of extensive documentation spread across the table. "I can explain everything," David began, but Emiko silenced him with a glare. "Explain what? Your falsified permits? The stolen patents? Or maybe your pregnant mistress in Los Angeles would like to hear about your wife in Vancouver?" At that moment, Lawrence Hart entered, distributing USB drives to each board member. The latest surveillance confirms money transfers to 6 separate accounts. And this morning's footage shows your parents removing artwork from their estate. David's face twisted with rage. "You orchestrated this, didn't you, cousin? You couldn't stand that Uncle Kaido and Aunt Marina preferred me." Actually, Violet Dawson, the company's senior accountant, stepped forward. "Masadaka Aguirre was in Sapporo when we uncovered your fraud. Your own arrogance led us to this point." Emergency alerts flashed across everyone's phones as the stock of Aguirre Environmental Solutions plummeted another 20%. Trading would be halted within minutes. "The media is outside," Kayla, Masadaka's assistant, announced. "They're requesting statements regarding the EPA raid and the patent theft allegations." David lunged for his phone, but Sarah Chun intercepted it. "That device is now evidence in a federal investigation." "Evidence of what?" David sneered. "Wire fraud, environmental violations, tax evasion." At that moment, Francis Valenzuela entered, holding a folder of legal documents. "Would you like the complete list?" The elevator dinged, revealing Marla Petty with 2 federal agents. Her designer outfit couldn't hide her distress. "I've given my official statement about the beach house meetings, about everything," she said, but David snarled. "We had an agreement." "Like your agreement with my sister?" Marla's voice dripped with contempt. The paternity test results arrived. Interesting timing, considering Gabriella's visits to her personal trainer. Michelle scrolled through her tablet, eyes widening. "The Paris apartment's been seized by French authorities. Something about irregular visa applications and fraudulent business credentials. You've lost everything." Masadaka finally spoke, his quiet tone carrying more weight than David's outbursts. "The patents, the money, the escape plan, even your son isn't yours." David's composure shattered. "Uncle Kaido will never let you. Your precious uncle and aunt are currently explaining to federal investigators why they helped launder money through their charitable foundation," Francis said, smiling without warmth. They seemed quite distressed about the social implications. The board voted unanimously to remove David from all positions. As security escorted him out, Emiko blocked his path. 15 years of marriage," she hissed. "Every business trip, every late meeting, you were building your harem while I defended you to the board." Sarah Chun stepped forward with handcuffs. "David Aguirre, you're under arrest for environmental violations, wire fraud, and multiple counts of financial crimes." Through the boardroom's glass walls, they watched reporters surging forward as David was led to a waiting federal vehicle. Camera flashes captured his downfall for tomorrow's headlines. "Sir," Kayla approached Masadaka. "Gabriella is on the line. She's hysterical about her Swiss accounts being frozen." "Let her panic," Masadaka replied, gathering his documents. "Francis, proceed with Phase 3. "Already done," Francis replied, projecting new information. "David's other families have been contacted. They're filing joint lawsuits. And your parents' reputation." She pulled up social media coverage. "Let's just say their charity board positions are in jeopardy." The sun set over Sapporo's skyline as Masadaka surveyed the aftermath. In a single day, he dismantled years of betrayal. His phone buzzed with a text from Lawrence. Gabriella's trainer confirmed everything. "Want me to release the evidence?" "Not yet," Masadaka replied. "Save something for tomorrow. They thought they were playing chess while I was playing war." The federal indictment landed like a bombshell across Sapporo's business community. Kaido and Marina Aguirre's carefully crafted social empire crumbled as their phones exploded with cancellations for their annual charity gala. "Marina, darling," Margaret Whitmore, chair of the symphony board, said, her voice dripping with fake concern through the speakerphone. "In light of recent events, perhaps you should step down from the fundraising committee." Marina clutched her Hermes scarf, knuckles white. But I've chaired that committee for 20 years. Yes, Margaret paused delicately. But the FBI investigating your family's charitable foundation makes things rather awkward. Across town, David paced his holding cell while his attorney delivered more devastating news. The environmental licenses for all 12 sites have been suspended. The lawyer explained. The EPA's findings triggered automatic contract terminations. Major clients are filing lawsuits. What about my immunity deal? David demanded. Rejected, the lawyer replied. The prosecutors have too much evidence. Your parents' testimony alone. David slammed his fist against the wall. They talked. They're facing federal charges themselves. The money laundering scheme through their foundation. At Aguirre Environmental Solutions, the crisis management team worked through the night. Violet Dawson's analysis painted a grim picture. Client contracts worth 300 million yen are in jeopardy, she reported to the Emergency Executive Committee. The environmental violations have triggered penalty clauses. Janet Chin studied the Asian market reports. Our Pacific Rim partners are threatening to pull out. The stocks are in free fall. What about the European division? Marcus Rodriguez asked. In chaos. Emiko Wilson replied, her voice steady despite her own personal turmoil. The French authorities have frozen all assets connected to the Paris operation. The stolen patent applications have compromised our technology licenses. Masatika's phone lit up with an urgent message from Lawrence Hart. Gabriella's trainer talked. Sending video evidence now. The footage played on the boardroom screen. Gabriella entering the upscale gym at odd hours, emerging disheveled with a muscular trainer named Derek. Timestamps matched precisely with David's business trips. Release it, Masatika instructed. Let's see how David handles this revelation from his cell. Francis Valenzuela entered with fresh documents. The other families are coordinating their lawsuits. David's Vancouver wife has gone public with her story. The Los Angeles girlfriend sold her exclusive to TMZ. Your parents are here, Kayla announced quietly. Kaido and Marina Aguirre had aged decades and days. Their designer clothes couldn't mask their desperation. Son, Kaido began. We can explain. Explain what? Masatika's voice cut like steel. How you funded their affair. Or how you helped David steal company patents while laundering money through your charitable foundation. We only wanted what was best for the company, Marina pleaded. David had such vision. Vision? Masatika projected surveillance photos across his office screens. Here's your visionary mother. These women. These families he abandoned. The communities left with toxic waste because he stole cleanup funds. This is who you betrayed me for. The foundation board is meeting tonight, Kaido said quietly. They're voting to remove us. They already have, Masatika replied, showing them his tablet. Your social empire's finished. The charity boards, the symphony committees, the museum trustees. They've all voted you out. Marina collapsed into a chair, her perfect composure finally breaking. Where will we go? What will people say? Richard's voice trembled. You should have thought of that before using foundation money to fund your nephew's Paris love nest. The intercom buzzed. Sir? Gabriella's personal trainer, Derek, is here with his attorney. He's willing to testify about their relationship. Masatika completed the sentence, his eyes cold. David's baby. Isn't his? He turned towards Richard, his voice sharp. Another lie you funded with stolen money. Security footage showed Gabriella arriving at the building, demanding entrance. Her Chanel suit couldn't hide her panic as she learned her gym lover had confessed everything. Your prenup fraud scheme failed, Francis informed the elder Aguirres. The original document survived. Between that and the foundation's illegal transfers, you're facing serious prison time. Prison? Marina whispered in horror. Did you think betrayal would be comfortable, mother? Lawrence Hart's final report arrived. David's other families have formed a support group, sharing evidence of his deceptions. Their combined testimonies will ensure maximum sentences. The company leadership is in crisis, Violet reported. Environmental licenses suspended. Contracts frozen. The reputation damage is exactly what they deserve. Michelle Wilson entered, her boardroom authority restored. Let them learn what betrayal costs. Masataka surveyed the ruins of his family's legacy. In their arrogance, they've forgotten the first rule of power. Never underestimate the one you're trying to destroy, sir. Kayla appeared. Andrea Hart from the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit is here about the offshore accounts. Show her in. Masataka straightened his tie. Time to begin rebuilding from their ashes. The federal courthouse buzzed with anticipation as Judge Eleanor Martinez reviewed the final settlement documents. 3 months of legal battles had culminated in this moment. In the matter of Aguirre Environmental Solutions, Judge Martinez adjusted her glasses. The court has reviewed all evidence regarding environmental violations. Mr. Poole, your client's plea bargain is rejected. Troy Poole, now facing disbarment proceedings himself, shifted uncomfortably. Your Honor, he began, the Aguirres have offered full cooperation. After attempting to destroy evidence and transfer assets, Francis Valenzuela interjected. The surveillance footage clearly shows them shredding documents minutes before the EPA raid. Richard and Marina Aguirre sat deflated in tailored suits that looked suddenly cheap. Their social circles had evaporated. Their charitable foundation dissolved. The court orders full restitution of 47 million yen, Judge Martinez continued. Furthermore, all company ownership rights are transferred to Zachary Aguirre. Effective immediately, in the adjacent courtroom, David faced his own reckoning. Judge Thompson's voice carried through the walls. 7 years federal prison, Mr. Aguirre. The environmental crimes alone warrant this sentence. Your multiple instances of fraud and tax evasion make it lenient, the judge added. David, his designer's suit replaced by prison orange, finally lost his smooth facade. This is persecution, Uncle Kaido. Tell them. Silence. Judge Thompson thundered. Your uncle's testimony helped build this case against you. Perhaps you should have considered that before betraying your family's legacy. Gabriella's divorce hearing proceeded simultaneously on the floor above. Judge Sarachin reviewed the prenup evidence. Mrs. Aguirre, this court finds your attempts to modify the prenuptial agreement constitute fraud. You forfeit all claims to marital assets. But I have nothing, Gabriella protested. Her Chanel suit a poor shield against justice. The Swiss accounts are frozen. The Paris apartment seized. Perhaps you should have considered that before committing perjury about the paternity test, her own lawyer muttered. Michelle Wilson testified next, her boardroom authority lending weight to each word. The company's environmental licenses have been reinstated under new management. Mr. Zachary Aguirre's leadership has already restored client confidence. The stock price ticker outside the courthouse showed Aguirre Environmental Solutions climbing steadily. 3 major clients had renewed their contracts that morning. The court recognizes the company's restructuring plan, Judge Martinez announced. Full control transfers to Zachary Aguirre, with oversight from the approved board members. Francis organized the victory systematically. Criminal charges secured. David, 7 years federal prison. Parents, asset forfeiture and house arrest. Environmental violations, settled with full restitution and enhanced compliance programs. Ownership structure, complete transfer to Zach. Board approved. Reporters swarmed the courthouse steps as David was led to a prison transport. His Vancouver wife confronted him publicly, their children watching from a safe distance. You abandoned us for what? She demanded. A Paris fantasy with a yoga instructor? How's that working out? Gabriella emerged next, mascara streaked despite her attempted dignity. The trainer scandal had destroyed her social standing even before the paternity results leaked. Ms. Fink, a reporter called, using her restored maiden name. Any comment on your former in-law's testimony against you? She hurried past, clutching her knockoff handbag. Her last attempt to access the frozen accounts had triggered additional fraud investigations. Inside, Richard and Marina faced their son for the first time since sentencing. The family estate, Marina began, is mine now. Masataka cut her off. Along with the company you tried to steal. Consider your modest retirement home an act of mercy. Son, Richard attempted. We never meant to get caught. To destroy everything our family built. Save it for your court-mandated therapy sessions, Masataka replied coldly. Francis approached with final documents. The restructuring's complete. You now own controlling interest in all subsidiaries. The board meets tomorrow to approve your new environmental initiatives. Michelle Wilson joined them. Her own divorce finalized that morning. Major clients are responding well to our enhanced compliance programs. The stock's up 12%. And David's other families? The support foundation is set up. They'll receive fair compensation. Masadica surveyed the courthouse lobby, watching his parents shuffle toward their monitored freedom, David en route to prison, and Gabriella facing her newly empty life. The family legacy? Francis asked quietly. Needs rebuilding. Masadica straightened his tie, on a foundation of actual integrity this time. The newly renovated headquarters of Aguirre Environmental Solutions gleamed in the morning sun. Glass walls displayed the company's restored stock prices and environmental achievement awards. In the executive boardroom, Masadica presented their latest initiative to enthusiastic investors. Our breakthrough cleaning technology has reduced toxic waste by 80% in previously contaminated sites. He highlighted the data. The EPA has certified all 12 locations as fully restored. Janet Shin, now promoted to Global Operations Director, added, Asian markets are responding exceptionally well. 3 major corporations have signed exclusive contracts. The stock hit a new high this morning, Marcus Rodriguez reported, up 200% from the crisis. Our environmental leadership awards have restored public confidence. Michelle Wilson, who declined David's prison visitation requests, managed investor relations with renewed vigor. The press can't get enough of our restoration projects. Communities are celebrating their cleaned-up landscapes. A gentle knock interrupted them. Andrea Hart from the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit entered, her professional demeanor softened by a warm smile. The Victim Compensation Foundation is ready to launch, she announced. We've identified all affected parties from David's schemes. Masadica nodded appreciatively. Their weekly meetings about the foundation had evolved into dinner discussions about justice and renewal. Vancouver family's eldest starts college next fall, Andrea continued. The education fund's in place. Los Angeles girlfriend's baby will have full medical coverage. What about Chicago? Michelle asked, her own healing evident in her. Concern for David's other victims. Ex-wife's art gallery opened last week. The foundation's small business grant made it possible. The intercom buzzed. Sir, Lawrence Hart's team has finished upgrading the compliance systems. Violet Dawson hurried in with quarterly reports. Environmental initiatives are exceeding projections. Client confidence is at record levels. Speaking of confidence, Janet smiled. The International Environmental Council called. They're presenting you with their leadership award next month. Masadica accepted the news modestly, but Andrea noticed his quiet satisfaction. They discussed how true victory meant more than punishment. It meant building something better from the ruins. The foundation needs a director, Andrea mentioned casually. Someone who understands both business and compassion. Before Masadica could respond, Kayla entered with breaking news. Marla Petty's relocation is complete. Small-town bookstore. Fresh start, just as planned. And Gabriella? Michelle couldn't resist asking. Teaching yoga at a suburban studio, Kayla reported. Quite a change from her Paris dreams. The trainer found someone else, apparently. Marcus pulled up real estate photos. Your parents' retirement home is modest but comfortable. The monitoring system works perfectly. Troypole's disbarment is official, Francis added, entering with fresh contracts. He's filing for bankruptcy. Turns out legal ethics matter. Andrea studied Masadica's expression as he processed these updates. His ruthlessness in pursuit of justice had impressed her, but it was his commitment to rebuilding that drew her closer. The new family traditions you mentioned, she began. Start tonight, he finished. Dinner at that quiet Italian place? Unless you're busy with more financial criminals? Their subtle smiles spoke volumes. The boardroom's atmosphere shifted, acknowledging this glimpse of their leader's personal renewal. The environmental compliance seminar starts in 10, Kayla reminded them. Executives from 12 companies are waiting. They're eager to learn from our enhanced protocols, Janet added. Your opening speech about corporate integrity has them intrigued. Masadica gathered his materials, sharing a meaningful glance with Andrea. Let's show them how real environmental leadership works. As they headed to the seminar, Michelle touched his arm. I heard from the Chicago family. Their daughter made honor roll. The foundation will match her college fund, he decided immediately. Every victim deserves a fresh start. Francis appeared with more good news. EPA's quarterly review, perfect scores across all sites. They're using our cleanup model as their new standard. The afternoon sun caught the new company logo, a phoenix rising from corporate ashes. Below it, the words environmental integrity shown in bold letters. Quite a change from a year ago, Andrea observed, falling into step beside him. Good changes, Masada agreed. Built on truth this time. The seminar room filled with eager executives while Andrea slipped into a back row. She watched Masada command the room with authentic authority, teaching others to prioritize environmental responsibility over quick profits. This, she thought, is how legacies should be rebuilt. 1 year later, the Seattle Environmental Leadership Summit buzzed with anticipation. Industry leaders gathered to witness Aguirre Environmental Solutions receive its unprecedented fifth consecutive Compliance Excellence Award. Under Masada Aguirre's leadership, EPA Director Thompson announced, toxic waste removal efficiency has improved 300%. Their innovative technology has become the global standard. The audience rose in a standing ovation as Masada approached the podium. Andrea sat in the front row, her FBI credentials replaced by the foundation director's badge she had taken 6 months ago. Environmental responsibility is not just corporate rhetoric, Masada addressed the crowd. It's a commitment we prove every day in every community we serve. Screens displayed before and after images of restored landscapes. Children played in parks that were once contaminated zones. Local news clips showed families returning to clean neighborhoods. Janet Chun presented the results of their Asia-Pacific expansion. 30 new contracts, each exceeding environmental standards by 200%. Our Tokyo office leads the region in sustainable practices. Marcus Rodriguez followed with data from their European operations. The Paris branch, he paused, acknowledging the irony, now hosts the EU's Environmental Training Center. In the audience, Michelle Wilson sat with David's family from Vancouver. Their eldest son, now a college freshman studying environmental science, has earned the first Foundation Merit Scholarship. The victim support program has exceeded expectations, Andrea reported during her segment. 100% college acceptance rate for the children of affected families. 12 new small businesses launched. 3 community centers opened. A brief flash of security footage from a suburban strip mall appeared on the screen. Gabriella teaching yoga in nearly empty classes, her designer dreams replaced by discount athleisure. The audience murmured knowingly, reflecting no sympathy. From our correspondent at the Federal Correctional Facility, Michelle whispered to Masada, David's attempt to teach business ethics to fellow inmates was poorly received. Frances Valenzuela, now running legal compliance from her new boardroom position, shared hard data. 0 violations across all operations. Every audit passed with distinction. The Aguirre Protocol is now standard language in environmental contracts. A discreet alert on Masada's phone showed his parents check in at their retirement home. Richard and Marina Aguirre's monitored existence continues in their modest apartment, their social calendar empty except for mandatory therapy sessions. Troy Poole was spotted bussing tables, Kayla murmured, placing updated statistics on the podium. Turns out disbarred lawyers have limited career options. The closing ceremony of the summit featured Chun, director of the International Environmental Agency. The Aguirre Foundation's work transforming corporate culture is setting new standards. Their support for education, small businesses, and community restoration demonstrates how companies should address past wrongs. Violet Dawson, now Chief Financial Officer, displayed the final quarterly results. Stock price has tripled, client satisfaction is at record highs, and employee retention is topping industry charts. Marla Petty sends her regards, Andrea mentioned in a quiet moment. Her small-town bookstore just added a coffee shop. She's found peace away from the spotlight. The evening concluded with the announcement of the Foundation's new initiative. Andrea took the stage, her quiet authority silencing the room. Today, we launched the Corporate Integrity Institute, she revealed, teaching businesses to prioritize ethics over profit, environmental responsibility over quick gains, ensuring that no other families suffer from corporate betrayal. Later, at their favorite Italian restaurant, Masadica and Andrea reviewed the day's achievements. Our wedding plans, kept private from the media, will reflect the same integrity we demand professionally. The Chicago family's daughter made the dean's list, Andrea shared. She's interning with our environmental science division this summer. She's the perfect candidate for the mentorship program, Masadica agreed, building futures instead of destroying them. The restaurant's TV briefly showed David being denied parole. His prison jumpsuit has replaced his designer suits, his smooth charm erased by hard time. Your cousin's wife from Vancouver just earned her MBA, Andrea noted. The Foundation's education grants work wonders. Speaking of wonders, Masadica smiled. The community center in that cleaned-up neighborhood opens tomorrow. Ready to cut the ribbon? Soon to be Aguirre. Huh? Andrea's reply was interrupted by late-breaking news. The International Environmental Council has named Aguirre Solutions Rehabilitation Program Project of the Decade. Quite a legacy, Andrea observed. The right one this time, Masadica agreed, his relentless pursuit of justice tempered by a genuine commitment to restoration. As Sapporo's lights glittered outside, they reviewed their shared vision: environmental integrity, corporate responsibility, and healing for the victims. A betrayal. The phoenix had risen, stronger and wiser, from the ashes of family conflict. The final revelations played across various channels. Gabriella Fink struggled to fill yoga classes at her suburban studio, tucked between a discount liquor store and a pawn shop in suburban Sapporo. David marked the days in his prison cell on a stark wall, waiting for an impossible redemption. Richard and Emiko adapted to life without social status, quietly enduring their retirement in the monitored community. Troy Poole's bankruptcy proceedings continued in small claims court, and Marla Petty found unexpected joy in her small-town bookstore. They thought wealth meant power, Masadica reflected. They learned that integrity matters more, Andrea finished. Their quiet dinner continued, a victory meal seasoned with justice served and future secured. Outside, the restored landscape stretched toward tomorrow, proof that some betrayals lead to better beginnings. 10 years after the scandal that had shattered Sapporo's elite, Masadica's family, life had dealt its verdicts with poetic justice. Gabriella Fink, now teaching sparsely attended yoga classes at the Serenity Mind and Body Studio, found herself in a neighborhood far removed from the world she once knew. Her once flawless face now bore the strain of failed ambitions. The Louis Vuitton luggage she had once packed for Paris now gathered dust in her cramped one-bedroom apartment above the studio. "And breathe into child's pose," she instructed, her voice lacking the charm that had once captivated Sapporo's elite. The diamond bracelet, a token from David, had been pawned long ago to cover rent. Her phone buzzed with yet another rejected job application. No prestigious fitness center would touch her after the scandal. The trainer, Derek, who had fathered her child, had moved on, marrying a younger instructor and building a successful franchise of gyms across the region. His success stood as a constant reminder of what she had lost. Her 10-year-old son, raised on child support from a reluctant Derek, showed no interest in meeting the man who had once claimed to be his father. David's name now brought only shame. In the federal correctional institution, David Aguirre's seventh parole hearing ended like all others denied. His attempt to lecture fellow inmates on business ethics had become a running joke. 3 more years remained on his sentence, extended for bad behavior and failed manipulation schemes. Inmate Aguirre, the parole board chairman noted, your continued attempts to orchestrate financial schemes from prison demonstrate zero rehabilitation. His multiple families had flourished without him. His ex-wife, Mika, had built an environmental consulting firm with foundation support, now advising major corporations. Their children, graduated from prestigious universities, were working in environmental protection, a fitting irony. The woman he had once loved had married a tech executive, her foundation now helping other victims of manipulation. His ex-wife in Los Angeles had opened an art gallery focused on environmental awareness, their daughter leading youth advocacy programs. Richard and Emiko Aguirre lived quietly in their monitored retirement community, their obsession with social status replaced by mandatory therapy. They watched from afar as their former friends attended galas they once hosted. Their charitable foundation's mission, now led by Andrea Hart Aguirre, stood as a testament to how power should serve the community. Troy Poole, the disbarred lawyer, now managed a small-town diner after bankruptcy consumed his assets. His legal ethics violations had become a cautionary tale in law schools. Marla Petty had found unexpected happiness in her small coastal town bookstore. The coffee shop edition thrived, her book club's environmental awareness series drawing passionate locals. Her testimony against David, initially seen as a betrayal, had freed her from toxic family obligations. Michelle Wilson, whose environmental compliance consulting firm set industry standards, had remarried. Her new husband's integrity was a stark contrast to David's manipulation. At Aguirre Environmental Solutions' 20th floor headquarters, Masadica reviewed the decade's achievements with his executive team. The company's market value had increased tenfold. Their cleanup technology had restored ecosystems worldwide. The London office reports complete rehabilitation of the Thames Industrial Zone, Janet Chin, now global president, announced. Ahead of schedule and under budget, Marcus Rodriguez, heading European operations from the Paris office David once coveted, shared record profits. The EU Environmental Council had adopted the Aguirre standards across member nations. Violet Dawson's financial stewardship had earned industry accolades. Her whistleblowing against David had become a Harvard Business School case study in corporate ethics. Kayla Harper, promoted to chief of staff, managed the company's expanding influence with quiet efficiency. Her loyalty during the crisis had set a standard for corporate culture. Francis Valenzuela's legal frameworks for environmental compliance had influenced international law. Her prosecution of David had shaped corporate fraud legislation. Lawrence Hart's security firm, retained permanently after the scandal, developed cutting-edge corporate fraud prevention systems. His surveillance footage of David's crimes trained law enforcement agencies. In their restored Sapporo home, Masadica and Andrea Hart reviewed foundation achievements over breakfast. Their twin daughters, future environmental scientists, inherited their parents' commitment to integrity. The youngest of the Vancouver family had graduated summa cum laude, Andrea noted. Environmental law at Yale. Perfect timing, Masadica replied. The Foundation's Legal Justice Initiative launches next quarter. The Foundation had grown beyond victim support into a global force for corporate responsibility. Its Corporate Integrity Institute trained executives worldwide. Environmental justice programs restored communities that David's crimes had endangered. Their phones buzzed simultaneously with news alerts about David's latest parole denial. Andrea smiled, remembering how investigating his financial crimes had led her to Masadica. He claimed the yoga instructor visits stopped because of scheduling, she read aloud. Not because Gabriella can't afford the gas to drive to the prison. Masadica's ruthless pursuit of justice had transformed into strategic philanthropy. The company's environmental leadership awards filled walls once decorated with false family loyalty. Sarah Chin, now EPA director, had lunch plans with them to discuss next-generation cleanup technology. The regulatory standards they developed after David's fraud had become international benchmarks. The day's schedule showed back-to-back meetings, foundation scholarship reviews, environmental initiative launches, and corporate ethics seminars. Their legacy of integrity attracted global leaders seeking similar transformation. Late afternoon brought updates from their global monitoring system. Gabriella's studio had missed another rent payment. David's prison counselor reported continued manipulation attempts. Richard and Emiko attended mandatory community service. Troy Poole's diner struggled with health code violations. Marla's bookstore won a small business award. The evening charity gala celebrated environmental restoration in communities David's crimes had poisoned. Victim families shared success stories. Former employees praised the corporate culture that replaced toxic family loyalty. Their daughters presented research on next-generation environmental technology, proving that integrity was passed down through generations. The audience included scientists, executives, and government leaders, people drawn to authentic achievement rather than David's hollow charm. A decade ago, Masadica had addressed the gathering. Betrayal taught us that true legacy isn't inherited. It's built through integrity, sustained by truth, and measured by positive impact. Andrea added, the foundation exists because healing matters more than vengeance. Every victim family's success dismantles the power of past betrayals. The Sapporo skyline glittered beyond windows that had once witnessed family destruction. Now they framed a future built on genuine environmental leadership and corporate responsibility. In his prison cell, David marked time, on walls that wouldn't see freedom for 3 more years. His Paris dreams had dissolved into concrete reality. The cousin he had betrayed had transformed family shame into global respect. Gabriella's last student canceled as she cleared the studio. Her designer yoga wear was replaced by discount brands. The trainer who had fathered her son drove past in his luxury SUV, not glancing at the failed studio that showcased her fall. The foundation's quarterly report showed a 100% college graduation rate for victim families. Dozens of successful small businesses had launched,